In the 1980s, before traction control and electronics, the riders who raced these superbikes depended only on skill and nerve. What you're about to see is rare footage that was filmed on the tracks where it all happened. It was the golden age of motorcycle racing, and this film was a look back to the men who became legends of the sport. Enjoy.
Welcome to Superbike Legends. Hi, I'm Keith Code, and along with John Ulrich, we're going to be showing you some fantastic footage of the riders and the machines that made up Superbike and Formula One racing here in the United States. John?
Yes, Keith, we're looking at some footage now from the early 1980s when AMA racing in the United States was the breeding ground for future world champions. We'll see the races in which guys like Eddie Lawson, Freddie Spencer, and Wayne Rainey developed the skills that would later take them to several world championships each.
That's right, John. Here we are. There's Wayne Rainey. And
hey, look, Keith, there you are, standing next to Wayne. What stylish attire.
I don't have bell bottoms on. Okay, here we are at Elkhart Lake. This is 1982 and the start of the Elkhart Lake race. Let's let some of this footage run and we'll bring up some of the names of the past.
Notice that some of the riders are riding full Formula One machines, 500cc two-strokes, 750cc two-strokes, and some of the riders are riding four-stroke 1000cc superbikes. Here's Wes Cooley leading on a 1000cc four-stroke Yoshimura Formula One bike direct from the Suzuki factory in Japan.
And Wayne Rainey, three-time world champion in one of his first few Superbike, actually Formula One races, riding his Superbike there.
There's Harry Klinsman, a really prolific and talented privateer from California. He brought his S1 Kawasaki 1000cc four-stroke to races all around the country.
There's Dale Singleton and Doug Bronick. Dale Singleton was Daytona winner back in 1983, I believe. There's a group of riders going up the hill at Elkhart Lake, Turn 5. Wayne Rainey chasing John Betancourt here going up the hill into Turn 5. Wayne Rainey, of course, as I said, going on to win 3 world championships. John Betancourt, one of the very, very best riders from the northeast of the United States.
Here's Cooley leading. Looks like Eddie Lawson riding the KR 500 two-stroke hot on his tail.
Steve Wise, road racer turned, motocrosser turned road racer there on bike number 38 on one of the factory Hondas.
Look at those lean angles. They just don't seem quite as acute as they got later on when the tires improved. What do you think, Keith?
Absolutely, John. The tires of the early 1980s are probably not as good as a DOT street tire of 1992, 1993 vintage. So yeah, the lean angles, although they looked fantastic to us when we were back there racing, definitely are not what they are today.
Yeah, the levels of grip weren't there either. I mean, it was a major production, keeping the things from spinning out, coming off the turns.
It's always close racing. Everybody's good and everybody runs, and that's part of racing that makes it interesting, is that nothing's ever the same.
Your machine was running real well.
Yes, it ran.
I like to go as slow as I can. That way I can race the whole race. You know, if you get out there and you charge right off the bat, we just don't know how long it's going to live. So, you know, something that fast and that wild, it's just hard to say when the thing's going to go off, when you're going to be able to go for it. And, you know, just how fast Freddie wants to go is how fast I've got to go, and I hope the thing lasts the whole race.
You and Roberts, I think that's going to be a good race. I don't believe there's anybody else that can keep up. I don't think. How do you feel? Have you been watching the other competition?
Well, yes, I have. I think Kenny is by far going to be the toughest. You know, Eddie's going pretty good and Rainey's going pretty good, but I think as the race wears on, we just have to wait and see our tires. You know, it's cool today, so it's not going to be that tough on tires as we expected, but Kenny's going to be the toughest. I think that is going to be a two-man race.
Laguna Seca, another one of the epic battles of this year. Kenny Roberts, Freddie Spencer out there swapping paint. We're going to take a look at a really fantastic race at Laguna Seca.
There are a lot of really well-known riders in this race. There's Randy Mamola, number 7. We've seen Eddie Lawson, number 21, on the KR 500. This would turn out to be a pivotal race in the Superbike Championship in 1982, even though this is a Formula One race, simply because Eddie Lawson crashed and broke his neck and came back from that injury to win the Superbike Championship anyway.
And there's the start, Laguna Seca 1982. All of our heroes over here. Kenny Roberts actually coming back after retirement, winning of 3 World Championships and the 500cc Grand Prix. And here's Kenny out of retirement, out there racing with Freddie Spencer, who's really right in the prime of his career.
Well, actually, though, he didn't retire until next year, 1983, when Spencer beat him for the 500cc World Championship. Isn't that right, Keith?
Right you are, John. It's a good thing you're a journalist. Yes, that is correct. This was a very interesting situation. Kenny getting one of the Works 500cc Yamahas to bring over here to the United States when he was in contention for a world championship, and everybody thought at that time that it was quite generous of the Yamaha factory to let Kenny ride over in the United States, and it really meant a lot to the fans here in America, as it did to have Freddie Spencer back over here on our soil.
What we're seeing here is extremely rare footage. These tapes have basically been lost in somebody's garage for 10 years, and here we get to take a look at these and see a lot of fantastic competitors early in their career. It's like going back in a time machine.
It certainly is, John, and we are definitely lucky to have this footage.
There's David Aldana, number 40.
Many of these riders certainly have retired. Some of these riders are in fact deceased. And having some of this footage back in the days when there really was no television in American road racing is indeed extremely lucky.
You couldn't just turn on the TV and see racing at this time. I mean, any kind of TV coverage at all of any type of motorcycle racing was extremely rare. Road races didn't get the attention they deserved in any way as far as TV goes.
And there's the epic battle between Kenny Roberts and Freddie Spencer heating up. We're going to see quite a number of different leaders. Usually it's going to be the yellow bike or it's going to be the red bike here at Laguna Seca for this event. It was a fantastic event. The spectators went absolutely crazy. It was impossible to tell whether Kenny and Freddie were actually out there racing because they were both in the World Championship situation. Of course, they are racers, but it almost looked like they were putting on a show to those of us on the paddock side of the pit wall.
It was definitely an entertainment, a piece of entertainment. There's no doubt about it.
There's the old track at Laguna Seca, we might mention, without the newfangled infield that we're using currently for the Grand Prix and also for the AMA races. We've got a yellow flag in turn 9, and it looks like the race has been red flagged.
It's really not that surprising, Keith. I mean, the old Laguna Seca course didn't have a lot of room, and if guys crashed, it was easy for them to end up on the racing surface. They'd have to stop the race and clear the debris and get the rider to safety.
That's true. Everybody, certainly the riders, and I suppose the spectators as well, are really happy for the changes that have been made at Laguna Seca, the moving out of the barriers, and also for the new infield configuration. But here it is at the old track, and there is Freddie Spencer. He's mastering this race at this time. Randy Mamola in second there, Kenny Roberts, and bringing up the tail of that little pack is Wes Cooley on riding one of the Formula One bikes, really basically a modified superbike at that time.
Well, actually, they were running special Formula One frames, and they got those bikes directly from the Suzuki factory in Japan. So it was a pretty serious piece.
Definitely. Mike Baldwin, a four-time U.S. Formula One champion, just ahead of Wayne Rainey.
Here we've got Mike Spencer, number 20, no relationship to Freddie. He's riding a Vance & Hines Suzuki Katana. There's David Aldana, number 40, riding a Yoshimura Katana. Just ahead of him was Kerry Andrews.
Eddie Lawson chasing Kenny Roberts, two of the most famous names in racing in the world. Rider gets off the top of the corkscrew. Wes Cooley makes it through. Kenny with his trademark wheelie down the corkscrew right at the end of the race. Eddie Lawson following him down to victory lane. And a quick cut to the starting line of the Superbike race at Laguna Seca in this year. The Kawasaki team, Eddie Lawson and Wayne Rainey. There's David Aldana, number 40, on the Suzuki, and there's the start of the race. John, it's always interesting to look back at these early 80s and late 70s type motorcycles with the wide bars on them. It almost look like these guys are riding Longhorn steers compared to the modern day Superbikes and Formula One type machines.
It's definitely a different look, and it felt a lot different too, as you know, Keith. I mean, you got to the end of the straightaway on one of these things, and it seemed like the wind was wanting to rip your head off. You did that all race long, and your neck really hurt. I mean, these things didn't exactly give you a lot of room to tuck in behind the number plate. And you definitely had to deal with 140-mile-an-hour winds.
That's true. Well, yeah, John, they were about as aerodynamic as a concrete block. And Eddie Lawson going to one more trip to the winner's circle as he did so many times in his Superbike career here in the United States.
He absolutely dominated this race. There we see Wes Cooley.
The end of the Superbike segment, and here we are for the second leg of the Formula One race. Taking a look back over some of the old machinery, a little close-up there of the Suzuki 500 GP race bikes, the Kawasaki KR500, and the bikes are being pushed off now for the second leg of this Formula One event.
Okay, here's the start. Looks like Freddie Spencer's jumped out in front.
There we see old turn 2 at Laguna Seca. As you can see, the hay bale's very close to the outside of the racetrack. Everybody was extremely happy when they got moved back.
Yeah,
Freddie Spencer indeed did take a jump out in front on this leg with hard to see who was in second. There's Kenny Roberts working his way through traffic, still in third place, but I believe he remedies that a little bit later on in the event.
Yeah, it's really great to see how many very large improvements there have been made at the Laguna Seca racetrack over the years. Looking back here, this is before they really did any changes, and there isn't a lot of room in case you crash.
Wayne Rainey through the corkscrew. Kenny Roberts through the corkscrew. Eddie Lawson through the corkscrew. Wes Cooley through. Steve Wise. And Wayne Rainey.
Looks like Mike Cohn, and here comes Kenny Roberts. Randy Momola. Another view of that corkscrew. That turn is a lot more tricky than it looks like at first observation. I mean, it's a whole other picture when you're rolling down that thing.
That's true. It's you can't see the steepness of it from this particular angle, and it is steep. When you come over that thing, it really drops off. As you can see, Kenny doing his trademark wheelie through there. Wayne Rainey at the beginning of his career on the Superbike. And here's winner's circle.
Okay, now we're at Daytona, Keith. We've seen the start of the Superbike race. Roberto Pietre from Venezuela has jumped out in front.
That's right, the Superbike 100 at Daytona on the big tri-oval race course. Here we see the leaderboard with Mike Baldwin up front, Roberto Pietre, and Freddie Spencer in third position, but I believe that's going to change. All the stars are here. The green bike out there is Eddie Lawson. We have some of the field playing games with each other, coming through the chicane at Daytona.
What we just saw there was a good example of the difficulty that some of the faster riders face when they come up on lapped riders. This is a really big field, and the level of skill of the riders varies by quite a bit.
And up onto the banking goes Eddie Lawson on the big green Kawasaki, a big 1000cc bike. Freddie Spencer coming through the chicane.
Looks like Lawson in hot pursuit. Now going up onto the banking here, this is where you really can't find enough space behind the number plate to tuck in. Little rider having a little problem with his entry line into the chicane.
An argument with the hay bales, I suppose.
After 100 miles of this, you're definitely happy to see the checkered flag, and here we've got winner's circle. Freddie Spencer and Roberto Pietre holding up the trophy. They're very, very happy. This is a good day for Team Honda at Daytona. Ah, yes, the chicane. Don't miss your brake markers. Corner workers are getting right to it.
Okay, John, there we are. The fire's cleaned up. It's just another look at Daytona. High speed, very long straightaways. Here we are again at the famous chicane. There's Freddie Spencer on the 500cc Grand Prix style bike out in the Formula One event. This would be practice and qualifying for the Daytona 200.
This looks like a heat race. That's Graham Crosby, isn't it, that Spencer's pouring champagne on?
Yes, it is. And here we are at the old Laconia track in Loudon, New Hampshire. This place is legendary for its snapping turtles and animal pit. There we are. Well, Richard, Ronnie Reagan was there, of course, at Laconia. Everybody shows up at Laconia.
You get some wild fans at this track, always have. Unbelievable action out in the forest. Well, we're back at Elkhart Lake.
Here we are in a wet weather beginning of, looks like a superbike race here at Elkhart Lake. And that's right, Eddie Lawson in the very back. I think he had crashed in the wet heat race and had to start from behind. There's Eddie going up the inside with a bright green suit on. He came from about 40th, and looks like he's going to enter turn one in maybe third. Front straightaway at Elkhart Lake. Roberto Pietre in the lead. Smoke in the field. Looks like he got an incredibly good start. Lawson in a conservative fifth at the beginning of this event, not wanting to repeat his heat race crash.
Now, adding to the difficulties that these riders face just from the track being wet is the fact that there's different patches and pavement transitions on the race course. Traction changes and can change in the middle of a corner as they cross these different pavement patches. This is a pretty tricky track. And you've also got the visibility problem. By the time you get to the end of the straightaway in a rainstorm on this track, there's so much spray flying around from people you're trying to pass or people you're lapping that it's almost impossible to see, and you're going very, very fast.
Very true. Elkhart Lake, a slippery track under the best of conditions. There's Eddie making the best of a slightly drying track, and he has assumed the lead. There's Wes Cooley pulling his way through the field up towards the front, also with a very slow start in this event.
Whoa, you just saw that right there. That was a traction problem personified right there. A little bit of wiggle of the rear end. Here's Eddie after he's gotten the checkered flag.
Cooley finishing second. And Wayne Rainey in third position at this event at Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, Road America.
Look how young Eddie looks. Look at that. Future world champion.
Future four-time world champion, in fact.
Future four-time world champion. No doubt about it. And that Muzzy Kawasaki team, between Eddie and Wayne, you're looking at 7 future 500cc world championships. That's incredible.
The bikes really work well. They got a really good power band, which makes it easier to ride in the rain. We made the right choice with the tires and just kind of rode my own race, and I think that's what it took.
Eddie mentioned the tires as being a very crucial factor.
Oh yeah, they got 3 different tires you could run out here. We went with the Michelins. They seem to do the best. They went through the puddles the best. You could have picked some other ones, but they slid around more, but I think the Michelins were the best.
Isn't it particularly difficult, though, to gain any traction at all? I mean, you guys must be hydrofoiling down the straightaway.
Well, I tell you, when it's dry, you use full throttle, and when it's wet, you use about quarter throttle. So there's a big difference.
Well, are you guys going to try to pull 1, 2, 3s now like the Honda team was doing?
Well, all we got is 2, so we'll just try to do a 1-2.
Okay.
That'll be good. Right now, we're first and second in the standings. So Eddie's got 69 points, and I have 49, and I got a 7-point lead over the Honda guys. So all I figure I got to do is just keep consistent and stay aboard and not fall down.
What about catching the main man?
Well, I was just thinking, I think the only way I'd be able to catch Eddie is if he fell down and I won, and then I'd be tied.
Congratulations, Wayne.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Yeah, we're back in the saddle again now, I think.
So to see, you broke up that Kawasaki one too.
Yeah, well, we got to get back up in there. We've last couple of years we were always doing pretty good, and this year's been a little bit of development year for us, and now things are starting to work for us, so we're back in the saddle again, like I said.
I got to ask you, when you knew that Lawson started 33rd, and when you saw him go by, or did you see him go by?
Yes, I did see him go by, and the thing was, starting in the back row like that, it's I've started in the very back row and won the race before a couple of years back, so it's not really that much of a disadvantage. Eddie's a good rider, and I think in the first couple of laps he made up for it with no problems as far as, you know, getting out of the way of maybe some of the slower riders and getting himself a clear track. He went by me. He was just running in the corners a little bit harder than I was, and I wasn't willing to take that chance, and it worked out for him.
Seattle International Raceway, another one of the epic Eddie Lawson and Freddie Spencer duels is in the offing here.
I remember this year, Keith, very vividly. Eddie Lawson felt many times and told me that Freddie Spencer was winning the PR war even though he was winning the races. It really meant a lot to him to race against Freddie, and he really wanted to win very, very badly. So this race, when Eddie did pull it off, meant a lot to him.
It definitely did. You're right about that, John. Here's Eddie ahead of Freddie on that particular lap, but it went back and forth so many times that it was an amazing battle, coming down to a last lap, last turn charge by Eddie Lawson, and we unfortunately won't be able to see it, where Eddie passes Freddie Spencer in the dirt about 50 feet from the start-finish line and managed to edge him out by about a half a wheel length. There's Eddie celebrating his win, and that was a hard-fought win.
Eddie, of course, went on to win the Superbike championship this year. Well-deserved title. Here we have Freddie, a little bit more reserved. Here's the winner's circle with Wes Cooley was third, Eddie in the middle, and of course Freddie. And you can just see how happy Eddie Lawson is. I mean, this is one happy guy. He loves to win. He loved to win then, and he's very, very happy that he and the Muzzy Kawasaki team have come out on top on this day.
From Seattle International to Riverside Raceway in Riverside, California. Here we have a stellar lineup of Superbike racers. Early 80s style. Wes Cooley sitting there on the Yoshimura Suzuki. Wayne Rainey on the Muzzy Kawasaki. Here we have Steve Wise on the factory Honda. Roberto Pietre next to him on factory Honda. Of course, Eddie Lawson is here. Mike Baldwin, all the stars of the early 80s. John?
It's also interesting to look at some of these mechanics. There's Suhiro Watanabe next to Cooley. There's Merlin Plumley, Mike Velasco. Over here we see a much slimmer Rob Muzzy from a decade ago. There's Eddie Lawson, the man who would go on to win 4 500cc World Championships to add to his 2 AMA Superbike titles. Got Steve Wise next to him. This really is a very, very strong field, and they're very, very heavy factory participation.
That's right. Riverside Raceway was never known for its ability to attract spectators, unfortunately, and that's probably why it is now defunct and has left the racing circuit, and that's unfortunate. This race, however, was very well attended by there's Rob Muzzy, was very well attended by the factories, as were most of the races back in the early 80s. Here we have the push-off and ready to get going for the warm-up lap, and I think we're going to move right into the race.
Background, you see the slightly banked turn 9 with a wall at the top, hay bales in front of it, very difficult turn.
And very hard wall. That wall is made out of boilerplate with earth backing. Nobody ever got through it on a motorcycle, that's for sure. Here's the start of the event. That's Riverside turn 1, and you see them disappearing into turn 2 and up through the famous Riverside S's.
It's really a shame that this historic track is now the site of condos and a shopping mall. So much history has taken place here. So many great races were fought on this pavement. Very difficult track. Turn 1, relatively bumpy. On these motorcycles in this era, it was very difficult to get through there without the motorcycle, shaking around a little bit. If you didn't have your bike set up right or you're a little bit offline, you could do quite a dance through there, and it was plenty exciting because guys were not slowing down very much for turn 1.
That's right, John. I think turn 1 was the most exciting turn at Riverside. There's no question about that. Sometimes there'd be a crosswind right there where we're looking, and when you'd hit that little dip on the inside, which you see all these riders were avoiding going wide around it, you could actually get the bike airborne and wind up 3 or 4 feet to the right of where you started out on the track.
You know, it's really interesting. I remember the first time that I rode a fast street-based motorcycle at this track. I went up to Steve McLaughlin, who at the time was one of the fastest superbike riders in the U.S., and I asked him, you know, quite sincerely, I thought he would answer my question. I asked him, how fast can you go through turn 2? As you see bending off there and to the right in the distance. And he looked right at me without blinking, without cracking a smile, and said, you can go through turn 2 wide open. And then he turned and walked away. And of course, if I had attempted to go through turn 2 wide open, I would have been in those grandstands in the far distance. There's no doubt about it.
That's right, John. No, absolutely no doubt about it. Here we are in what was famous turn 7, downhill right-hander, coming into a hard-braking crest, as Eddie Lawson followed by Mike Baldwin, which is pretty much the story of this race. This is the long track here again at turn 7, going up. The short course went off there to the right on that little jog and onto the back straightaway and then down to turn 8 and turn 9. Here in this particular AMA Superbike event, we're using the long course, which added somewhat over half a mile to the Riverside Raceway, making it a little over 3 miles total.
And it gave you one heck of a long straightaway. This was one fast racetrack in this configuration. You see them going around turn 8 through that little kink there and onto the back straight. And you could really get railing by the time you got to the end of the straightaway and had to bend it through the kink, which led you onto that banked turn 9. These bikes would really move out there. As a matter of fact, the day before this particular Superbike race, I was in an endurance race at this track and finished second with my partner Bruce Hammer to Eddie Lawson and Ron Pierce on a Muzzy Kawasaki, and was astounded when during the race Eddie Lawson went around me at the end of the back straight through the kink, over the bumps, just went flying past. It was unbelievable. We had calculated that our bike was reaching 176 miles an hour at the end of that straightaway. Eddie Lawson drove around the outside of me. It was very, very impressive to me. I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
That's right, John. You see easily the various pavement patches and pavement imperfections on this track. Here we are at famous turn 6 at double apex with 3 or 4 actual camber changes going through the turn 6 with a wall on the outside of it. A very interesting track. And as I said, you can see the pavement variations on this track. Very, very rough track because it was mostly used for car racing in those days. Cars, of course, when the asphalt gets heated up, they run through the asphalt and roll it up practically like a cat stopping on a rug on a polished hardwood floor. And we see here, we were all very, very excited in club racing in Southern California to get this new pavement here through turn 6 and through turn 7, but the rest of the racetrack is definitely not this smooth.
Oh yeah, I mean, and this was a huge advantage for the guys who really knew what they were doing. The Muzzy Kawasaki's, for example, worked much better over the bumps than some of the bikes other guys were running. I mean, Eddie Lawson and, of course, his crew chief, Rob Muzzy, knew how to make their bike work, and it really paid off for them. I mean, these guys could just fly over the bumps and have a lot less trouble doing that than some of the other guys. I mean, it really was a difficult track for the average guy to get his motorcycle to work on.
Here we have the end of the race. Eddie Lawson the victor, as you can see, even though Mike Baldwin was in front of him. It was a race-long duel. They took off, left the field. There's Eddie, a very happy guy on the Muzzy Kawasaki. Starting off down the long back straightaway, and I think Eddie's got a little treat for the fans. There's a long, long, long wheelie. Wes Cooley, who had a few problems during the race. Wayne Rainey, who finished third in the event. A very happy young man.
We have Eddie and Wayne getting ready to take a victory lap with the race queen.
You see Mike Baldwin is not up there unless he's turned into the race queen with red and white Honda colors on.
I don't think that's him. He looks a little different.
Here we are back at Loudon, New Hampshire. This is the Laconia track, actually Briar Motorsport Park, and this is the track's old configuration. It has now been changed. It's now called New Hampshire International Speedway, and the track is sort of a mini Daytona with a 1-mile banked oval, cupping in the road race course, which actually wound up to be about the same length as the old track, 1.6 miles. There's Mike Baldwin, one of the Loudon masters, Wayne Rainey on the Muzzy Kawasaki, back in the old days when it was 1,000cc superbikes, and this, of course, is the Formula One class. Rainey there going underneath a rider at the old Loudon track.
What a change in character, though. This old track has so much history. It was such a different track to ride on than the new configuration. This is a very difficult track, had a lot of elevation changes, just a huge amount of history, drew enormous crowds. I have a lot of fond memories of this racetrack, Keith, and I have a hard time getting excited about the new version.
Well, I happen to share that with you, John. I've raced at the new New Hampshire International Speedway for the last 2 years, and I had raced in the Superbike days back in the 70s at the old track, and I preferred the old track too, with all its bumps, all its walls, and all its trees and all its rocks.
Now here we've got an example of how not to do it. This motorcycle is blown up. This guy's still riding it on the racing line, and it's hard for me to believe that he's not putting oil on the line. It's also hard for me to believe that he doesn't know something is amiss. Here we have Jimmy Fleece on his TZ 500.
Jimmy had a hard time on that 500. It was an ill-handling beast. It was one of the old inline machines that he rode with. Kenny Roberts had helped him out with. In fact, Kenny Roberts had taken him under his wing in that year. And here we see Mike Baldwin on the FWS 1000. John, what can we tell the folks about
Interesting that? V4 with a tremendous amount of torque. So much torque that for this race, Baldwin was able to gear the bike to run third gear only, ran the whole race in third gear, was smooth as silk the whole way, dominated on his home track, and of course went on to victory.
We have coming down the hill at the old Loudon track, Briar Motorsports track. Now it's interesting, this is the oldest road race in the United States. I believe they last year celebrated something like their maybe 67th year. The first Loudon track was actually at Gunstock up in a park, and it was run up in that park, a public park with trees all the way around. Here's Mike Baldwin celebrating his win at his home track.
Here he is taking his victory lap, carrying the checkered flag on that extremely torquey V4 Honda, 1000cc. A factory special, not a machine you could go to your showroom and buy. Very, very capable racer, especially in the hands of Mike Baldwin. Here he is in victory circle.
In victory circle, flanked by two of the most famous road racers in the world. This will be certainly one of the very few times that Mike Baldwin will stand on the top of the podium with Eddie Lawson and Wayne Rainey. Baldwin, however, did very well in the United States, winning 4 Formula One championships. He never did capture a Superbike title here in the United States. And while he did race for Kenny Roberts on one of his Grand Prix machines for 1 year, he didn't really have any terrific success as his two competitors who were standing there with him did.
Okay, here we are at Willow Springs Raceway, in the middle of the Mojave Desert in California. Somebody's blown an engine, oiled up the track, and the corner workers have put cement dust or grease sweep on the oil to try to soak it up. Here we see Wes Cooley, not wearing his usual leathers. He's riding a Suzuki, picking his way inside the grease sweep up through turn 3. He's got to cross the grease sweep to get into turn 4. Making his riding task quite a bit more complicated, trying to deal with the grease sweep covering the oil around the racetrack.
Cooley, definitely one of the masters of Willow Springs. His father used to run a racing organization in Southern California for some years, Wes Cooley Sr., and Wes was brought up on the racetracks of Southern California, which included Willow Springs, Riverside International, Ontario Raceway, Orange County Raceway,
Carlsbad.
And Carlsbad. We had 5 racetracks in Southern California, whereas now we only have Willow Springs. We have 1.
All in a 100-mile radius. I mean, you know, we used to hate to go to Willow Springs in the old days because it was the farthest track out. Now it's the only one we've got left.
We are going through turn 3 up into turn 4.
Looks like Roberto Pietre going around Billy Addington.
Nice pass up on the top of the hill.
Here we have Wes Cooley, obviously in victory at this early 1980s race at Willow Springs Raceway.
We're going to take a look back at the Laguna Seca race and just go to the corkscrew and a couple other interesting turns to show you some of the up-close action. We've got some really nice shots here. There's Randy Mamola coming down through the old turn 8. There's Wayne Rainey. We're going to take a look at this Laguna Seca event. Eddie Lawson. Mike Baldwin.
Listen to the sound of that FWS Honda. Quite a distinctive sound. Here we got a guy who had a little bit of trouble with his exit out of the corkscrew.
Eddie Lawson on the Superbike going up the hill at Laguna Seca.
That entire Essa section has been taken out now that they've changed the course. That was a very fast section. You had to be pretty brave to get your bike through there.
Right, Freddie Spencer here. Obviously, we're on a warm-up lap before the beginning of the event, and there they are off in another really exciting early 1980s Superbike event with the Eddie and Freddie show leading the pack.
It's Freddie Spencer in front right now, Eddie Lawson in second. You know that he wants to get past Freddie Spencer. This was an intense rivalry. Eddie especially wanted to beat Freddie Spencer every time, every track, every opportunity he had. He wanted to win. There's no doubt about it.
Here we have a beautiful view of the old turn 2 at Laguna Seca, which is now completely revamped. A very fast turn, and as David Aldeni used to say, you really had to have some huevos to get around that track. In fact, the old track, here's turn 3. Turn 2 and turn 3 were two turns that required an enormous amount of bravery as well as skill, because there was no runoff practically, and they were looking at 120, 130 mile an hour plus turns. And on an old Superbike, that was something, John.
Yeah, you know it was. I mean, these things were big old boats. They were long. They didn't turn like today's bikes. They didn't stop like today's bikes. They didn't have the grip. We run on bias ply, slick tires. These motorcycles were difficult to ride very, very quickly. And right now we're seeing some of the best riders of the era riding them very, very quickly. Freddie Spencer leading Eddie Lawson. Eddie Lawson in hot pursuit. He wants to pass Freddie very, very badly.
Let's just take a look back at some of the other Superbike events of the early 80s here at Laguna Seca at the old track. Really nice to see this vintage footage of the Laguna Seca racetrack, because nobody, of course, will ever see those scenes again. Here we have a very interesting duel between Steve Wise, Mike Baldwin, and Wayne Rainey coming up through the old turn 5 at Laguna Seca.
It's interesting because Mike Baldwin was the accomplished master, the #1 rider on the Honda team. And here's young upstart Steve Wise, a converted motocrosser, leading in a very good battle for first place. And I believe this is around the time when Steve Wise was one of your students, isn't it, Keith?
That's right. Honda was afraid that he might throw some more bikes away with his motocross background, and the then team manager Udo Giedel asked me to help Steve Wise, and it was very interesting. I was training Steve Wise for the next 12 events, and he got in the winner's circle 11 times out of the next 12 events.
And that was quite a dramatic turnaround, because I remember watching Steve Wise when he burst on the road racing scene, and he had some pretty erratic lines. I don't think the guy went through any given corner the same more than twice in 50 laps. I mean, it was astonishing to see. I think he was looking for the berm, I'm not sure.
That's probably right. Well, he cured himself of that, certainly. Being ahead of Mike Baldwin, certainly one of the 1980 Superbike legends, was no easy feat in those days.
And we're seeing some very precise riding by Steve Wise in this footage here. He was using every inch of the track, very precise on his turn-ins. He was doing a real good job.
Excellent. Here some other vintage footage of Freddie Spencer down through the corkscrew at Laguna Seca. Very obvious to see why they call it the corkscrew from shots like this. Shot of Mike Baldwin on the FWS, Randy Mamola in the corkscrew. To the signature Monterey cypress trees in the background. Laguna Seca facility now, Grand Prix quality racetrack, 40 feet wide now, although the configuration of this section is exactly the same. The track has been widened and repaved. It's certainly an even more beautiful facility than it was before. Of course, all of us thought that Laguna Seca was the most beautiful racetrack in the world when we first went up there in the 70s. How about you, John?
Oh yeah, I mean the scenery and the general setting of the track was just awe-inspiring.
Wow, those days are gone now. But the racers you've seen on this film remain Superbike legends. Thanks for joining me. See you next time.